Sharon Stone wasn't supposed to be the star. She wasn't supposed to outshine him, and she definitely wasn't supposed to enjoy what they filmed as much as she did. But during Basic Instinct, something happened between her and Michael Douglas that she kept secret for years. Something they did after every scene that blurred the line between acting and something much more real. It started on set, and it stayed with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. By the time she realized what it was doing to her, it had already broken her. Before she became the face of erotic thrillers, Sharon Stone was just another name on a casting sheet, tall, blonde, beautiful, and perpetually underestimated. Hollywood had seen women like her before, glamorous, poised, and easy to typecast. For years, Sharon tried to escape the mold, picking up minor roles in forgettable films, often playing the girlfriend, the pretty blonde, or the background distraction. But she wasn't just beautiful. She was sharp, calculated, hungry, and deeply aware that, in an industry obsessed with youth and control, intelligence in a woman was either feared or ignored. Sharon had ambition, but she also had boundaries. Or so she thought. Then came the script for Basic Instinct, a role no actress wanted to touch. Too explicit, too risky, too degrading. But for Sharon, it wasn't a red flag. It was her chance. She didn't flinch at the nudity. She didn't shy away from the control the character demanded. In fact, she leaned into it. She wanted the power. And for the first time in her career, she was being offered a woman who held all of it. Still, landing the role wasn't easy. The studio wanted a bigger name. Producers pushed for Michelle Pfeiffer or Kim Basinger. Sharon was considered a long shot, too unknown, too soft-spoken, too replaceable. But director Paul Verhoeven had a gut feeling. And when she walked into the room, cold, precise, and unblinking, he knew. This wasn't the pretty blonde. This was Catherine Trammell. The studio still resisted. Sharon offered to test. In her audition, she reportedly walked across the room, poured a drink, and delivered her lines with such unsettling calm that the room fell silent. She didn't just play the character. She became her. That decision changed everything. But no one, not the studio, not the director, not even Sharon herself, could predict what would happen next. Because what the world saw on screen was only half the story. What happened between scenes, what she shared with her co-star, was something she never expected. It's one of the most infamous moments in film history. Sharon Stone, seated between a panel of hardened detectives, cigarette in hand, legs crossed, and then uncrossed. The scene only lasts a few seconds, but it shocked an entire generation, redefined Sharon's career, and launched a firestorm of controversy that never truly faded. What audiences didn't know then, and what Sharon wouldn't fully admit until years later, is that she had no idea what was about to be shown. In her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, Sharon revealed that she was misled. She had been told the camera angle would obscure everything, that what they captured would be suggestive, not explicit. But when she sat in a dark theater watching the final cut for the first time, she realized just how exposed she had been. "I felt betrayed," she wrote. "I slapped the director. I left the room." It wasn't just the scene, it was the powerlessness of that moment. For a woman playing a character so in control, Sharon herself had none. Her body had been used as a tool without consent, without clarity, and without recourse. And yet, there was another side to the story. Despite the violation, Sharon also admitted she understood the impact. She saw how that scene catapulted her from obscurity to superstardom almost overnight. It was complex, messy, deeply conflicting, but that wasn't the only thing happening on set. According to those close to the production, the energy between Sharon and Michael Douglas was electric from day one. Not romantic necessarily, but charged, dangerous, tension you could feel when the cameras were off. A connection that neither of them spoke about publicly, but that the crew whispered about constantly. There were rumors that the two stayed in character long after cut was called, that they'd retreat behind closed doors between takes, that some of the steamiest scenes were so convincing because they weren't entirely staged. Of course, Sharon has never confirmed an off-screen romance. Michael Douglas hasn't either. But the idea that two actors, both married at the time, both navigating fame, both thrust into this dangerously erotic story, might have blurred the lines has never really gone away. In later interviews, Sharon admitted she sometimes lost herself in the role. She said that on set, she wasn't always sure when Catherine ended and Sharon began. And when asked about the chemistry with Douglas, she replied simply, "There were moments I forgot we were acting. But what really happened between Sharon and Michael after each scene? That's the part no one was supposed to know. On paper, Basic Instinct was a thriller. But on set, it was something else entirely." Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas weren't just playing characters. They were navigating something far more complicated. The chemistry was undeniable. Everyone on set could feel it. The looks they gave each other. The way their energy shifted when the cameras started rolling. And didn't always stop when they cut. Sharon has never claimed a real-life affair with Michael. But in her own words, the lines between acting and reality blurred more than once. They were in character for hours at a time, filming intensely intimate scenes under blinding lights and watchful eyes. But what happened after each scene, the quiet moments between takes, was what stayed with her. "We stayed close," she once said in an interview. "Sometimes it was hard to step away from who we were playing." People close to the production described how Sharon and Michael would often step aside between scenes. Not for long, just enough time to breathe, to reset, or maybe not reset at all. There were reports of long, quiet conversations behind closed doors, of emotional check-ins that didn't feel scripted, of moments that felt so real, even the crew didn't dare interrupt. They weren't rehearsing, they weren't reading lines, but something was happening. Sharon later admitted that her body and emotions were in overdrive during filming. "I didn't just play Catherine," she said. "Sometimes I felt like I was her." There's no official record of what was said or done between those scenes. No script, no footage, just the silence that lingered, and the way Sharon would later speak about how deeply affected she was. "We did it after every scene," she reportedly joked once. The emotional recovery, the reset, the moment to let it all sink in. But the way she said it, the tone, the glint in her eye, left people wondering, was that all? She never clarified, and maybe that's the point. The public has long speculated about what Sharon was really hiding during that time. Whether it was a relationship, a secret, or something more subtle, like the emotional toll of surrendering to a character who blurred the line between pleasure and power. She said that playing Catherine Trammell was like walking on a knife's edge, thrilling, addictive, but dangerous. It wasn't about sex. It was about control. And Sharon, for all her strength and composure, didn't always feel in control. At times, she was swept up in it. The character, the attention, the electricity between her and her co-star. And the aftermath was something she carried long after the cameras stopped rolling. Because when the film was over, Sharon walked away a superstar, but also deeply changed. And what came next nearly broke her completely. When Basic Instinct hit theaters, Sharon Stone became an overnight sensation. The scene that nearly caused her to walk out of the premiere was the same scene that would be replayed endlessly across late-night TV, parodied in comedies, and dissected in think pieces for decades to come. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who she was, but no one wanted to know how she was. She was branded a sex symbol, praised, objectified, fetishized. But no one asked how it felt to become a global fantasy because of a scene she wasn't fully warned about. Behind the glamorous magazine covers and press junkets was a woman quietly unraveling. In interviews that came years later, Sharon admitted that the fame didn't feel like a victory, it felt like an invasion. "They weren't looking at me," she said. "They were looking at a fantasy they created. And I couldn't keep up with it." People recognized her everywhere she went, but it wasn't admiration she felt. It was scrutiny, obsession, possession. She once described having panic attacks, not from being seen but from being consumed. She had played a woman who was always in control, of her body, her mind, her men. But in real life, Sharon didn't feel in control at all. "The movie made me a star," she admitted. But it also made me afraid. She couldn't trust the people around her. Every interview felt like a trap. Every compliment felt laced with something darker. Even on new sets, producers treated her like Catherine Trammell, expecting her to be cold, seductive, and dangerous. She wasn't allowed to be soft, or scared, or real. She later revealed that in the months following Basic Instinct, she felt isolated, misunderstood, and at times emotionally unstable. "You can't play someone like Catherine and come out untouched," she once said. "She gets into your blood, and she stays there." Friends noticed she was different. She was quieter, edgier, and there were rumors she didn't want to do another role for a while, because no script felt as dangerous or as addictive. She would go on to take more roles, win awards, and reclaim her narrative. But privately, she admitted that she struggled to understand what had really happened on that set, what it had cost her, and whether she'd ever feel safe in front of a camera again. Some called her difficult, others called her cold, but in reality she was just surviving. She had given a performance that made history, but it came at a price. And decades later, Sharon finally spoke the truth. "They got their movie. The world got its fantasy. But I lost a part of myself in that room, and I never fully got it back." Years later, when the interviews stopped and the spotlight faded, Sharon finally revealed what she'd been hiding all along. It took decades for Sharon Stone to fully reclaim her story. The glamour had faded. The frenzy around Basic Instinct had long passed. But something inside her hadn't settled. Not until she finally put pen to paper and released her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice. And that's when the world heard the truth. Not the scandal, not the studio spin, but Sharon's own voice, in her own words. She revealed that she hadn't just been shocked by the famous interrogation scene. She'd been blindsided. "They told me we wouldn't see anything," she wrote, "that the shot would be suggestive. I only found out what they actually captured when I watched the movie for the first time, surrounded by strangers." She claimed she slapped the director afterward. She walked out. She cried. But she didn't walk away from the movie. She couldn't. By the time she understood what had happened, it was already out there, frozen in celluloid, immortalized. And so, she did what she always did. She kept going, publicly calm, privately fractured. But the story didn't end there. In that same memoir, she dropped hints about the emotional chaos that swirled behind the scenes. The moments that never made it into tabloids. The feelings she didn't understand until long after the cameras stopped. She admitted to feeling swept up by the character, by the pressure, by the sensation that her body no longer fully belonged to her. And when she talked about her on-screen chemistry with Michael Douglas, she didn't confirm anything, but she didn't deny it either. "It was electric," she wrote. "It had to be, or the movie wouldn't have worked." When asked in interviews whether the tension between them was real, she only smiled. "Let's just say," she replied once, "we understood each other." What she did confirm was the emotional cost, the confusion, the loneliness, the sensation of being seen by the world, and yet feeling completely misunderstood. She revealed health scares, emotional breakdowns, and how the industry nearly discarded her after she'd given it everything. And she spoke, for the first time, about how it all changed her. Not just her career, but her relationships, her sense of identity, her trust. "People think I was fearless," she wrote, "but I was afraid every day. I was afraid of losing control, of being used, of never being seen for who I really am." She wasn't ashamed of Basic Instinct, but she wasn't proud of how it happened either. It was her breakout, and her breakdown. It gave her the world, and nearly shattered her in the process. In one of the most haunting lines from her memoir, she writes, "I don't regret the film. I regret not knowing what I was walking into." Today, Sharon Stone stands as a survivor, not of scandal, but of silence. And what she finally revealed all these years later changes how we see everything that came before. Sharon Stone didn't just survive Basic Instinct. She survived everything that came with it. The betrayal, the fame, the fantasies projected onto her by millions of strangers. and the silence she was forced to carry for years. She gave Hollywood one of its most iconic performances, and paid for it with her peace. Behind the camera, behind the interviews, behind the piercing glare of Catherine Trammell, there was a woman fighting to be seen not as a fantasy, but as a human being. What she hid during that time wasn't just a secret. It was her pain, her confusion, her blurred sense of self, and her truth. And now, after all these years, she's finally telling it, in her own voice. Because what happened after every scene wasn't just about pleasure. It was about losing control and slowly taking it back. For more of the latest news, check out this video.